And the last type of factoring we want to look at is when we have perfect square trinomials. Just like with our difference of squares or our sum and difference formula, we can treat this just like normal. It's almost just as easy to treat it like normal if I have small numbers, like these, right? So I would say I'm going to draw my box. The first term goes inside that first square. The plus 4, my constant term, the last term goes in the last square. I multiply those together and I get 4x squared, so it has to multiply to 4, but add up to negative 4. Well, 1 times 4 or 2 times 2 are the only options. It must be negative 2 times negative 2 and negative 2 plus negative 2. So negative 2x and negative 2x made negative 4x. Then I take out my greatest common factor. My biggest thing I can divide both of these by is x. X times x is x squared. X times negative 2 is negative 2x. Because this is a rectangle that has the same thing on both sides, we could actually call this a square. Right? I can write my answer as x minus 2 times x minus 2, but mathematically, even better would be to write that answer as x minus 2 squared. Right? There are two x minus 2's. So there are definitely times that having a pattern and recognizing this pattern is going to be helpful, but again, it's not essential, okay? As long as you know how to factor these somehow. So my pattern for squaring a binomial was to square the first term, so 6x squared, and then take 2 times what I get when I multiply those two terms together. And finally, I square the last term. Okay. So when I squared this binomial, I actually end up with 36x squared plus 30 times 2 is 60x, and 5 times 5, or 5 squared, is 25. Right? So how can I work backwards? What I would want to recognize is that I know the square root of the first and the last terms. And then I can just check to see if the middle term is double those two things together. So the very first thing I should always look for, is there anything I can divide all of the terms by? But for this one, there isn't. So then I say, do I know the square root of the first one and the last one? Right? I know the square root of 4x squared is 2x, and the square root of 9 is 3. So 2 times 2x times 3, does that get me 12x? So then this must have just been 2x plus 3 squared. If I had something like 49x squared and then 100, and I was going to make a diamond for that, I have to find something that multiplies to 4,000. Like, my list of things that multiply to 4,900 would be humongous, right? I don't want to necessarily have to do that if I can recognize a pattern. But as long as the numbers are pretty small, it's not so bad to do this method instead. So it is up to you which method you use. Having a pattern can help us save some time as we get into messier things. Last example. If I can divide all of these things, for sure I see a negative in the front. I never want a negative quadratic term, so I'm going to take out a negative 1 again. So I undistribute that negative 1. I still have x squared, but then this will be negative 12x and positive 36. Right? So then I look and I say, ooh, I know the square root of x squared is x, and I know the square root of 36 is 6. Then all I have left to check if this is a perfect square is to make sure that 2 times x times 6 is 12x. But because it's a negative 12x, I know that as a perfect square, since it is, right, I would need to write it as x minus 6 squared. The -1 is going to stay in the front, but I'm just going to show it as a negative sign, right, and say that that would be my final answer. So again, using this pattern really helps if we have super big numbers, right? But otherwise, I can stick to using the box and diamond method or the distributive property if I am more comfortable with that. No matter what method I'm using, I'm always checking for a greatest common factor first, and I'm always remembering to write the greatest common factor still in front of my factored form. So seeing if you could try the last of the practice problems.